Okay, so in the last class, we discussed about the symbol table. That was actually part of intermediate representation itself. Anyways, symbol table is used in all phases of compiler. Now let us take the next topic, supposed to be the next chapter. So it is the procedure abstraction. We'll see what is the importance of procedure abstraction. Okay, we have seen in the front end, we have the lexer, we have the parser, then we have the semantic analyzer, and then also we saw intermediate representation, or it is also known as intermediate code generation. So in all these phases, we have used something called symbol table, which we discussed in the last few classes. And whether this symbol table is sufficient is the next question. No, it is not sufficient because symbol table will take care of all the variables, its attributes. When it is available, it will be updated in the table, like how I told the procedures and also the functions used in the implementation. We can use that and we can update. But that alone is not sufficient because some things will happen in the runtime. Okay, like there are many languages, they have got the features that should be suitable for the machine code to execute. And many times, calling the function, updating the data, intermediate results, how it is updated, all that is taken care even during the runtime. Okay, therefore, along with the symbol table as the data structure used, we also need to maintain something called runtime environment. Okay, so this data structure, how we are going to use, what is the difference between the symbol table and the runtime environment, when this will be used, all this we'll discuss. Okay, so what is the important difference or what is the gap between the high level structures and the low level structures? We have to understand. Why? Because see, in the high level structure, which we call it as source language program, we have something like we use functions, we use objects, we use exceptions, we use dynamic typing, we use lazy evaluation. Okay, other things you know about the lazy evaluation, if I have to give an example, suppose you want to implement logical AND operation, you want to use this. Okay, so you know how it works. If one of the input is 0, then definitely the output is going to be 0. I don't have to check the second input for logical AND operation. Similarly, for the logical OR operation also, if one of the input is going to be 1, and I don't have to check the second input because anyway the result is going to be 1 only. So these kind of methods or strategies can be used during the evaluation. So that many programming languages in the high level structure, we make use of these things. I just gave simple examples. There may be many more evaluations like this. Okay, means we have very rich structures in the high level languages. So it is very easy for us to write the code for our requirement. On the other hand, what we have is we have the low level structures, and those are nothing but the structures that are present in the machine. So like if you take any architecture, some assembly language, if you take, we have a few structures, we have few instructions that can take care of the normal operations, like it can take care of arithmetic operations, it can take care of logical operations, it can perform the data movement, like using the move instruction or the load instruction or the store instruction. We can use the memory model, we can use the register model, we can also take care of the control structures by using the jumps. Okay, but compared to high level languages, we have very less primitive operations, and we have very less operations that are present in low level. Okay, so what did we do in the intermediate representation then? We try to write something which is independent of the source language and the machine language. Okay, means whatever we could do in the high level language, slowly we interpreted in the form of intermediate representation, which is now very easy and convenient for us to convert into the machine language. That is why we had to take some instructions like load, store, all this we used as part of intermediate representation. That is to make it convenient and easy and simple in the machine code. So let us see how to fill this gap more. And when you have more difficult constructs like functions, when we have, how do we handle? When we have the dynamic typing, means at the runtime only you'll know all this, and the size is known only at the runtime. How many times you execute the function, that is known at the runtime. So these things how to handle, we'll see. Okay, so the requirement for runtime environment is because we need to map these high level structures onto your low level structures of the machine. Therefore, we need some environment to take care of this, and therefore we use a set of data structures at runtime to implement these high level structures. Like we make use of the stack, we make use of the heap, we make use of some area like static area. Okay, maybe we can reserve it for the constants, and then also we can use some virtual function tables. Maybe physically it does not exist, but in our imagination it will be there, so some table kind of structure. Okay, so these things we can have, we can maintain this because it is essential at this stage, why we have to map onto the low level structures. Therefore, there is a need for runtime environment. And definitely, there is one more thing that is required, the compiler versus the cross compiler. See, we have only dealt with the source language and the target language. Source language is what the language you use for your source program. Please mute, students. Students, can you please mute? Students, mute. Venkata Satish, you should leave the class. Okay, I'm not going to consider your attendance for today. Okay, sorry for that interruption, students. I'll continue. Okay, so strongly depends upon the features of both the source and the target language. Means if at all I'm writing some source code in some language, some high level language, and I want to run in some particular machine, say machine M. Okay, so that I call it as the target language. Whatever this machine M uses, that I call it as target language. But what happens, always the compiler may not do, or whatever we create, we may not run on the same machine. So in that situation, we will have to use something called cross compiler. Means I have used some source language, I have converted into some target machine language, but I want to run in a different machine now. Okay, then I make use of the cross compiler, because another level I have to use to convert from one target language to the other target language, and then we execute in the desired machine. Okay, so even the cross compiler can be used, but generally we say compiler, because whatever we want as a source language, we use it, and whatever target language we want, we will take that and we will run on the same machine. But if I want to run in a different machine, then we have to depend on the cross compiler. So even this is important, because once I generate some code in some machine, it doesn't mean that I'm going to always use the same machine for running that code. So at some point of time, maybe there is a requirement to convert into another machine code, and therefore we can use the cross compiler. So coming to the procedure abstraction, as the name itself says, we are going to whatever we do for the procedures, like when you have a function in the high level language, we call the function and only that you are realizing. So what happens internally, you are, maybe some people would have noticed that what happens, like minimum things will be the control will go to the function start address, and then at the same time the program counter will maintain the return address, means where it has to resume back and then it has to continue the execution, that has to be maintained. So the return address is saved somewhere. Once it comes from the function, it will start executing from that statement onwards. So not only this much, this you are aware, because maybe you have learned in some course, the stack is used for maintaining this. Okay, once you call the function, it will go to the control goes there, and it will continue with the execution of the function, and then it comes back. So, and it is not a very simple case. You can also imagine a recursive function. You can also imagine a function within the function that is called, and so on. There are a lot of complexities involved. And not only this calling and returning, there are some things that are happening inside the function. Means you might have used the same names inside the function, okay? And the name scopes have to be taken care now. And also what is returned, whether that value is used in the next function, you have to take care of that. And there are so many things. Means at each call, at each execution of some statement, there is something happening. So how do you get the update of that functionality? So therefore, we will have to maintain this data also. Whatever happens during the function function execution, you have to maintain that. Okay, so this is all about the procedure abstraction, where whenever you start executing the procedure, something called the activation record is created. Okay, what you call it as a stack, no, that same thing I am calling it using a different terminology, which is known as activation record. So activation of the procedure takes place whenever you invoke some function. Okay, once it is invoked, so it can be a recursive function, and like if it is a recursive function, what happens, you have called first time, and then internally again it calls the same function, and so on. And how the return happens, you know very well, right? So it means that whenever you have these kind of functions, these kind of procedures called, there are several activations that are live at the same time, means they're active at the same time. Okay, so how do we manage this then? Suppose I take an example, some instance, say A and B are activations of two procedures, and their lifetime is, if at all I say A and B both are active at the same time, it means that their lifetime is either not overlapping or it is nested. Okay, means both cannot be active at the same time. Only when in which case it is possible, only when it is not overlapping or it is nested. Means the procedure A is there, inside the procedure A, maybe I am calling the procedure B. Or if you make the recursive call, the same function has been called again and again. So that is what we call it as the activation at the same time. Means activation of more than one function at the same time. Okay, and not only this, we also need to have an agreement between the compiler and the operating system. Means we use lot of libraries in our program, isn't it? In the high level language, we use lot of libraries. So how this can happen, then how it will link all these libraries, because you know that the libraries are already, it is in the executable form. So it is just that you are including and you are using it. That's it. So this linkage convention is another aspect of the compilation, where it will be added to your code, and directly it will perform all the actions that are required at the procedure call. Okay, so this linkage convention is also essential. And how does it work? Actually, the linkages execute at the runtime actually, but the coding for this is already done at the compile time. Means already it is a compiled version of the code ready for you to use at runtime. See, nowadays in the modern languages, you don't realize how these linker will work. If at all you go back and see some languages like Fortran or Haskell or very old languages like COBOL and all, those languages, maybe whenever you execute something, no, when you run the compilation command, what happens is it will show pass by pass. First pass compilation is over. Say pass to compilation is over. Now the linking happens. So at that time, linking happens. And then all operations are shown actually, and then finally, without any errors means the code is ready now, and now it is ready for execution. So it shows like that for the older versions of the languages. And also whatever compilers we were using at that time was not well defined. That's why all those were shown. But now the compilers are also fast, and all these operations are in the abstract level. You don't realize what is happening inside. Okay. Only thing is that you see, okay, these are the errors with respect to these line numbers, and this we are going to correct it with respect to the code. So that's what you realize. So this linkage convention, it is internally happening because that is an agreement between the compiler and the OS. So that compatibility should be there. Then only you can use that, and you can link it during the runtime. So you're going to use this at the runtime, but the code is already created in the compile time. Okay. So more about the procedure abstraction. So we have to see some of the terminologies. These are actually the common terminologies, but anyways, you should know it. A callee. So in a whenever you call a procedure, okay. So I'll just give all the terminologies now. Suppose I have a procedure say A, and from A I am going to call a procedure say B. Okay. Now A is a callee. Sorry, A is a caller and B is a callee. Means whichever is called is known as callee, and whichever function is calling another function, we call it as caller. Okay. And along with this, we also use the linkage convention, because in between some actions are required. The maintenance of these actions are done by the linkage convention. And also, whenever we call the functions, we use some kind of parameters, such as the actual parameters and the formal parameters. Whatever the parameters we pass, again, if I take the same example, procedure A and procedure B, from the procedure A, I am calling the procedure B. And when I'm calling that call statement, whatever parameters we use, that we call it as the actual parameters. And whatever is declared as the parameter in the corresponding function, say here in my example, I have taken B as a procedure name, and whatever parameters we declare in the procedure B, that we call it as the formal parameters. All this you know very well, definitely, but still I want to repeat it. Okay. So let us take some examples now. Here, if you see this example, S is equal to P of some parameters have been passed. So P is the function which is called, and as you see here, the arrow mark, one second. Okay, so here P is the function that has been called, and there are three parameters. One constant value is sent, and then T and U. These are supposed to be the actual parameters. And once it is called, here we have declared say P of A. Of course, data type is required. So in your actual declaration, you will be using the data type also. So A, B, C are the formal parameters, and within the function P, we are calling another function C. It is Q, and these are the parameters sent. So C and B will become the actual parameter with respect to the function Q, and at Q you have X and Y. These becomes the formal parameters. So if you take the first part, P is the function which is called. So that is a callee. And coming to the next part is what? So P is the function called, and within that we have another function called, that is Q. Okay, and now P becomes the caller and Q becomes the callee, and so on. So like this it goes. Okay, so implementing the procedures, it needs some things like whenever you execute the code, it will have to save the address of the next statement or next instruction that has to be executed once it returns back from the function. So that is nothing but saving and restoring the return address. And also we need to map the actual parameters onto the formal parameters as shown in the example. So that happens. And also it should create some storage for the local variables. I told you know in each function maybe we will use some local variables. Definitely the scope is important, and where the scope begins, where the scope ends, whether you're calling another function inside that, whether it is defined inside it, all that is important. It has to take you. So once you call a function, it becomes active until you return back from that function, it is still active. Okay, within that function, if you call another function, then that function also becomes active. Like P has been called, already one caller was there, some main maybe you can imagine. In the main you have called some function, say P, and inside P again D is called, means you can imagine that main is active now and P has been called, P is active, and then P has called Q, Q is active now, and then Q finishes its execution. Then once it returns from the function, then only it will become inactive. Okay, till then everything, all the data related to these functions have to be maintained. So it means that there are a lot of things that are in the abstract level with respect to the procedure calls. So let us see some of the three critical abstractions that are used in the procedures. So first one is the procedure call abstraction. Okay, whenever the call is done, in each language we have some mechanism to maintain the procedure and map the actual to the formal parameters, and also you have to maintain the order of those, and whenever you have some local variables that has to be maintained, all this. Okay, so from the caller's namespace to the callee's namespace, it has to store everything. Okay, and then also along with this, even the standard linkage conventions are used, and it will form a sequence. So which is calling which function, and that function is calling another function or not. So this sequence is maintained. Okay, and that is with respect to the procedure call abstraction. Coming to the next one is the namespace structure, where we may have the multiple declarations of the names. Means the scope may be only towards the local, that is local context. You can have the global also, means you may use the same names for the local variables as well as the global variables. Then definitely you will give the precedence for the local context first, because the visibility you're going to, current visibility you're going to see, and you take the current scope, and if it is not existing, then you will go to the external scope and so on. So the precedence, what I have explained with respect to symbol table, the same thing holds good here also. Okay, and similarly, the actual parameters in caller namespace is mapped to the formal parameters in callee's space. That's why we say you have to maintain the same order of the parameters, so that if there is any data type change, then it will give an error. Therefore, you have to maintain the same order of the parameters which matches with the actual parameters and the formal parameters. And along with this, we also need the external interface, because anytime, like if you take any assembly language programming, you may encounter like some instruction is there, something called interrupt. So if at all you call the interrupt, so it will perform its action at that point of time. Similarly, any other libraries when you include, it will have to perform its own action. Like this, there are many subroutines running which are actually external, to be treated as external interface. So even this is required, and therefore we use the linkage convention to define all the rules that preserve the caller's runtime environment and creates the callee's environment. Means you cannot lose the data. Just because I am running the new function, I should not be losing the previous function data. Therefore, it is preserved. Means the previous function data is also preserved. At the same time, I am making another function active, and due to this new active function, I have to store this also. So this has to be maintained properly. All the variables, all the intermediate results, everything will be saved until and unless you feel that it is not required in future. So otherwise it will be maintained. Okay, and this also transferring the control from the caller to callee and back. There are so many operations that are happening, and that we call it as the external interface. So once the function is called, it is not a simple task. There are so many things that have to be updated. Maybe whether you have to decide whether I'm going to use a register for saving or whether I'm going to use a memory for saving. How many registers do I have in the hand? Whether it is sufficient to maintain, and how do I update the parameter values? All these are important, and that will be taken care in the procedure. Okay, and so these are the three important critical abstractions, that is procedure call abstraction, namespace structure, and the external interface. So let us go ahead with the first one, that is the procedure call abstraction. How does it happen? Whenever the procedure call is done, first thing is it is going to transfer the control from the call site in the caller to the start of the calling. Okay, and similarly, how does it exit? Definitely it is going to exit whenever the call finishes its execution on the return statement. It will go to the exit state. Once it exits, what is the continuation then? Definitely after the function called, the next statement, that address is already saved as a return address, and it will continue from there onwards. So like this it goes. Okay, so whenever the function is invoked, that is the callee is invoked, maybe it will return back, or within that again some other function will be called, and like this it goes. So it depends upon the structure you're going to use. So let us take one simple Pascal program as an example and see how it works. Students, for this, I expect you people to be interactive. Okay, this is the code. I know you are not very much familiar with this kind of syntax, but anyway, it is very easy to understand. Okay, and there are many languages that follow the Pascal syntax actually. So if you take this example, if you take this example, first we are going to have the main. Okay, so the program, this is the keyword used in this particular language, program main. And okay, this is just like a prototype input output. The definition is not here actually. Okay, definition comes later. Anyway, there are some variables. To say var. If I put var at least one space x, these are all actually comma, x comma y comma z, colon integer semicolon. If I put like this, it means that x, y, z are the variables that are declared with the data type, say integer. Okay, and here the keyword integer stands for integer data type. So this colon is important and semicolon to stop that. Okay, and now after that, what do we have? We have something called a procedure. This keyword is used for all the procedures. So procedure and followed by the name of the procedure. This is the name of the procedure. Okay, so inside this procedure, what is happening, we'll see. So inside this procedure, we have another variable declaration, say x. Please note that there was a variable, say x, in the main also. It was declared outside this function, and the same name has been used here also. So variable x, integer. Now, like how we use the flower brackets for our C code and some more languages, we use begin and end for a particular block. Similarly, in the Pascal language, we use the keywords begin and end, which will mark the begin and end of any block. Similarly, for the procedure also, we use the begin and end. Like here, if I say begin and within the flower brackets, which is nothing but actually this is like a comment now. This fee is the name of the function. So now I am beginning with the function definition of P, F-E-E. Okay, within this function, what is happening then? We are initializing something like x is equal to 1, and then also we have another expression, say y is equal to x into 2 plus 1, something like this. Okay, so this particular evaluation should take place within the function phi, and here it ends. This particular function ends over here. Okay, this function ends. So the body of this function phi is here, and it is done. Now coming to the next line, what do we have? We have another procedure, say procedure FIE. Okay, procedure FIE. The name of the procedure is FIE, and within that we have some variable, say y, which is declared as real. please note that the same y has been declared as integer in the external function. Means in the global variable you have y to be integer, and inside FIE y has been declared as real. So that's what I was telling about the scope. So if at all you take this procedure phi, y is a variable where it is getting assigned with some value. Okay, and definitely that is going to be the integer because the scope is not changed. We will speak more about the scope in the next slide. So here I will just try to explain how it has been written, how it has been constructed. Okay, so within the FIE function, what do we have? We have another function defined. What is that? We have FOE. This is another function, and within FOE we have some declaration called Z is real, and within this again we have what? FUM. This is the procedure, and then we have variable say y, which is real. And also please remember that we have not yet started with the body of these functions. It is only the declaration we have done, procedure FIE, then procedure FOE, and then procedure FUM. Now once I start, actually this is in the nested structure, and FUM is the innermost function that is existing now. And within FUM, what is happening? We are having the body of this FUM. This is the body of this FUM. Okay, so begin FUM, and what do we do here? We are performing some operation, say x is equal to 1.25 into z. Okay, and also after performing this, what is that we are doing is we are calling the function, say FEE. This is the function we are calling, and then we are printing something. Right line is nothing but just like our printf. Okay, so with some syntax there. So now that is the end of my FUM function. So once you begin and end, so that terminates the function, and then now I have the definition of the function FOE. And in the function FOE, what we are doing is we are having some initialization of z. Okay, and then we are calling the function say FEE, and then after it returns back, then we are calling the function FUM. Okay, so that's what happens, and that is the end of the function say FOE. Then coming to the next function is FIE. Remember that inside FIE we had FOE, and then inside FOE we had FUM. So first we defined the innermost function, and then we went with the next one, that is FOE, and now finally we are with the FIE. So this function, what it is doing, it is calling another function say FOE, and then it is printing something. So that's it. Okay, and now actual execution where it starts from the main. So from the main, it is not seen properly. In the next slide, it is seen. So this is the begin of my main. I am initializing some value for x, that is x is equal to 0. And then, okay, I will show here. Here, x is equal to 0. And then we are calling FIE. So I have told some things about these procedures and how it is called, all that. Okay, students, now at this stage, can you answer what is the first function that is called in the entire code? What is the first function that is called in the entire code? Please answer.
Main function, ma'am.
Main function. Okay, within the main function, okay, you start from the main. Then after that?
Procedure fee.
Yeah?
Fee, ma'am.
Fee, FIE. Okay,
F
right. Okay, FIE is the function. Okay, so we call FIE. Then, so we go here, FIE, we go here. So where is the begin of FIE? Here. So of course that those declarations are taken care and the scope is also maintained, not a problem. So FIE is defined here, right? So in FIE, what we are doing again, we are calling another function FOE. So where is the begin of FOE? It comes over here. Within FOE, what happens? It calls FEE. Once it returns back returns back from FEE, then it will call FUM. Now, how to represent this then? We are going to use something called call graph. So this is what ma'am also was telling when she did the intermediate representation. For those examples, it was not required. But now these kind of examples, definitely we need to maintain how the calling sequence happens. We should maintain. And the return also we have to maintain, because once it returns, which one it will execute next. So that's important. So therefore, we can maintain this easily using the call graph. So as you told, it started from the main and then it executed FIE and then it called FOE. And after calling FOE inside, what happens? It will call FEE and it comes back and then it will go to FUM. And if it will go to FUM, again FEE is called. So that's why that link. Okay. And finally, if it is done, what happens? The control comes back to the main. Okay, so it returns every time. So first it will return from, okay, that also I can show it in the next part. Like you can see the execution history. First main calls FIE, then still it is active. Okay, and then FIE calls FOE and FOE calls FEE. Then, so once the FEE function is done, it will return back. The control goes back to FOE. It returns. This is important. Once it returns back, then it will continue with the next one. That is FOE calls FUM. This is what I am telling. Okay. FOE calls FUM. So FUM in turn calls FEE. And then FEE returns to FUM and FUM returns to FOE. Then finally FOE returns to FIE and the final is FIE returns to main. So this is the history. Okay, so how it is called, how it is returned, it will maintain the sequence like this. So one of the representation that can be used to maintain the calling sequence is the call graph. And then the history also you can see like this. The returning is also important, at what point it returns, because that decides whether you have to continue storing those values in your stack or heap is important. Therefore, whether it is active or not, that is decided based on whether you are still executing or you have exited from the function. So that is important. Okay, like this it can work. So whatever I told, maybe the same thing, it is there in this slide. So the path is created in the call graph from the main till the last one. And then once it is done, it will start returning from each function. So when the compiler generates the code for calls and returns, that code must be preserved enough and also the enough information should be available. As I told you, till it is essential for your program, it should be preserved. Sometimes what happens, you'll feel like, okay, this variable value I'm going to use later, and it has to be saved somewhere, either in some memory location or it can be stored in the some register. Okay, and later I will tell about the caller register and the callee register. There I will tell the importance of how to use these registers, when it is essential, at what point of time these things are required. So that also I'm going to tell maybe in the later stage. At this stage, you have to understand that whatever information you are having with respect to any procedure, that need to be preserved. Okay, then only you'll have the, like if you imagine some factorial function, you're calling with factorial of 8. So then the next call will be factorial of 7 and so on, right? So how do you get these values updated then, right? You go till the termination point and then come back and start returning the results. It performs some operation and finally the final result is returned from the function. So that should happen. There is a chain of operations that are happening. And also in between some updations are also happening. So that need to be saved every time. Okay. So it means that you are pushing something onto the stack and then you're popping out once it is done. And then you pop, finally you reach the main and then that is the end of it. Okay. So the operation should happen correctly and the information should be stored properly. Okay. So procedures may diverge or may not return. So this also can happen because as we see, if you are writing the correct code, then everything happens properly. It will return back. But if you are not giving the proper condition or if your code is not proper, it may end up with the infinite loop. So once it is into the infinite loop means there is no option for you to exit from that particular call. So that's what it means. Means something you are missing, therefore that's why it is going to the infinite loop. Therefore you have to take care of that. Otherwise, it cannot infinitely save all the information because there should be some end for it. Only when it exits, we can say that now it is not active. Otherwise, always it will be treated as active record only. Therefore, we have to take care of that. Okay. So that's why the termination point in every code is very important. That is one of the practice all programmers should have. Even checking the valid range, that is also important. Most of the time we don't care for it. Like we just give, okay, for this input it is working. But we don't check with the rigorous input, like what happens if I give something like this, whether it will terminate properly or whether it will give some result, whether it is the correct result or not, we don't care. So even that is also supposed to be the safety measure that we have to take care as a programmer. Many things the compiler will take care, but along with that, even there are some responsibilities of the programmer also to take the safety measures, so that we have to take care. Otherwise, it will run into the infinite loop. Okay. Still, the call mechanism must preserve. Means if you are not terminating, what happens? Till it resumes back, it has to maintain all the information. So you are having a overhead now, the space overhead and also the time overhead, because it goes into infinite loop, and then you have to still preserve everything. So till it comes out of that call, it will not be able to terminate, and it will not be able to delete those values from the memory. Okay. So definitely already I have given a hint that we can definitely make use of the stack mechanism. That is why, because that is a suitable data structure for maintaining this the procedure call abstractions. Why? Because you can easily track whichever has been called first. Like if I'm calling main first, it will create for that the activation record is created for that first, and the return address also correspondingly it will be saved. And then the first function, what is called, it will take that, so it will make the call, the control goes there, and inside that if I call another function, say function 2, it will create activation record for that. Actually it goes very well. The data structure, the suitable data structure would be stack only, because this last in first out, that mechanism, that order is very much useful for us, because when you return back, you know what is there on the top. So the innermost only will exit first. So that happens automatically due to the usage of the stack. That's why whenever we call the function, automatically the stack area has been used, and it will maintain all the records with respect to this statically, and it will preserve till you come out of the procedure. Okay, so that mechanism is only helping us. Therefore, we can use the stack model. Okay, this example, do I have time? Okay, so I told, some languages are very similar to our Pascal language. Here is one function which is actually a language called Tiger language. See, whenever you take up the intermediate representation is independent of any source language or the target machine. But we have to represent in some form. This call abstraction, that is a procedure abstraction, have to be maintained properly. Okay, so for that we may use some smaller kind of languages, like Tiger is also one such example. Like how I gave the Pascal as an example, that is a very convenient language to represent these kind of instructions, and whatever constructs we use, whatever structures we use, that is more suitable. Why? Because it supports a nested structure. Basically, the nested structure is that is a block structure programming is only the complex kind of thing, because you have several lexical scopes, you are reusing the names, all that is happening. Therefore, for such examples, if you are able to do the coding, then it becomes easy for us to map anything onto the machine language code. That's why we select those kind of languages in the intermediate representation, or to specify these kind of constructs like the procedure abstraction. It is very convenient actually. That's why we depend on some languages like the Pascal language, and another language would be like, say, Tiger, where it supports a lot of features. That's why we go with this. Suppose I take the Tiger language code. If you want to know more about the Tiger language code, there is one book that is actually the JLX. It is the compiler with the JLX. So you can use that book. Maybe I forgot the author name. It is actually a red book with Java. In that book, in the last page, in the appendix part, the Tiger language code is there. If you want to refer more, maybe you can refer, or I will only search for the resource and I will upload if you are more interested. Anyways, for now, what I can say is this is one example of the Tiger language code. Here, everything is treated as expression. Actually, in the Tiger language, no, everything is treated as expression. So, one keyword we use here is let. So, let some expression. Even the function, the entire function is treated as some expression, and then within that we define something. Okay, but we'll be using some keywords here and there so that we differentiate between the function and the other statements. Like here, we have started with let, and then this keyword function means that it is the function, and the name of the function is say d, and x is a parameter which is used, which is of type int. You can imagine it is similar to our Pascal, the colon and then type. Here only int is used, there it is integer. Equals. So now the body of the function starts. After equals operator, no, the body of the function starts. What will the body of the function have? Again, you can have another let expression kind where you will have all the declarations, something like this, where y is equal to 10 means y is getting the value of 10, and you have not shown whether y is integer or not. That is the advantage of using this language. Okay, so in this language, when I say y is equal to 10, 10 is what kind of value? It is an integer. So I don't have to declare y as integer. Instead, if I assign some value, it automatically takes y as an integer. Okay, so that is the advantage of using this kind of language. There are many more features. Yes?
Ma'am, in the previous Pascal's example,
Yeah.
We had three functions, no, ma'am, phi,
Yes.
p, and 4. In that example, it is fine. We don't pass any arguments.
Okay.
But when we pass an argument, there is an confusion whether it is actual or formal. So we also need to declare the function outside with a formal parameter right now.
Yeah, see, whenever you call, no, whenever, see here in the phi, suppose if I wanted to call, okay, first call only I will show. So if I had the parameter, what I would have done, phi of some a comma b, I would have done. So I have got two parameters. So in the phi, what I should have done, here I should have had those parameters. That's what the Tiger language is richer than the Pascal. You could see the difference. No, there I have declared the variables. Here I could have put what? Here int a or whatever. Suppose if you want to use a different name, that's fine, no problem. Int x and int y. So now x is the what? It is the formal parameter. And a is what? Actual parameter. Similarly, b is actual parameter. Y is formal parameter. So it can map like this. So anyway, in this example, we didn't take those parameters into consideration. If at all you want to take the parameters into consideration, yes, you can pass like this. It is allowed. Okay, but I told old languages were not having the rich constructs to build all this. That is why I am giving the Tiger language example also, which is similar actually. So in the Tiger language, did you notice that we have the parameters to be passed? And not only this, even we can have the return type. See here, the return type, how we will represent it. After this, we will have one colon, and then we will have the return type here, integer, like this, something like this. Anyway, I will upload that resource. You can just go through if you are getting interest in that. Okay. For now, you can only you will not be asked to write the code, students. Only when the code is given, you should be able to analyze and understand. That much is sufficient. Again, this example I will touch in the next class because now the time is up. So we will discuss more about more examples like using Tiger language, using C language. We will touch on all these. Okay, we'll see. Priyadarshan, I think it is Priyadarshan only, right? Is that clear? Whatever you asked, the doubt?
Yes, ma'am. Like initially, when we are calling the function, we pass the formal parameter. Then next, when we call, we can pass anything like a, b. First, when we are declaring,